in doing business in New York, I would say there might have been one of those characters along the way.
Tony Salerno, he was the head of the Genovese crime family, which was the most powerful crime family in the city.
And Fat Tony didn't just supply concrete to Donald Trump. The two men also shared a lawyer, Roy Cohn.
Ken Shapiro, and he also worked with the Philadelphia mob and the mob boss at the time, Nicky Scarfo, who they called Little Nicky, and he and the other gentleman I just mentioned, Dan Sullivan, the Teamster, who knew Trump, owned a piece of property together, and Trump needed it to build his first casino, so they leased it to him.
It's almost like, how could you possibly own a casino unless you had links to organised crime?
I have met on occasion a few of those people. They happen to be very nice people. You just don't want to owe them money.
Trump used the Gambino lawyer, Roy Cohn.
Donald Trump, he said, you stand up to the establishment, and I come see it.
The whole point was to resist. Never admit that you're wrong. Trump fell in love with that.
When John Gotti walked into a bar and shot a guy in the head, Roy managed to get Gotti off.
We have Cohn investigating homosexuals very aggressively.
That he was the one who threw the good parties.
And there were rumors he was picking up male prostitutes. I was in his office when Nancy Reagan called and thanked him for getting her husband elected.
Cohn looked at Donald Trump as a protege. Donald had the money, and Roy had the balls and the shrewdness.
The Gambinos and Genovese's S&A construction company were used for Trump's buildings in Manhattan.
Mr. Felix Sater.
My life has been beyond interesting.
Sater had an office in Trump Tower, a Trump email, and a business card listing him as a senior advisor to Trump.
Steve Mnuchin, Gary Cohn, Steve Bannon, Anthony Scaramucci, Dina Powell, all part of the Trump administration and all top executives for Goldman Sachs. Now, Trump was advised by Eric Prince and Joseph Smits, and they are both Vatican Roman Knights and former Blackwater executives. Now, Trump appointed Eric Prince's sister, Betsy DeVos, as the United States Secretary of Education.
Trump's first wife, Ivana, was born to a member of the Czechoslovakian secret intelligence. She has been invited to White House dinners for decades, which she attended while she was still married to Trump.
According to Wikipedia, Ivana Trump began dating Italian aristocrat Count Raffredo Gaetani del Aquilo de Argano Labatelli. Now, when you click on the link for this man's extremely long name, it takes you to this Wikipedia page. Gaetani, the name of an Italian noble family from the Papal States.
Black nobility family members, such as the Gaetanis, the Bourbon to Sicily family, and the Orsinis.
The New York Times published this article, and they referred to him as Mr. Gaetani. Quote, he grew up in a palace in Rome. He earned a doctorate in political science. Mr. Gaetani, being of such a powerful old Italian family, can count 2 popes amongst his ancestors.
She sure seems to be well connected. They all seem to be in the same club.
Is this why Giuliani was knighted by such a prestigious gangster?
The Savoy Orders have a strong and growing presence in the Americas. Headquartered in New York City, the American delegation of Savoy Orders and its charitable arm support the charitable, cultural, and dynastic traditions of the orders in North America. Also directly supported through the International Association of Knights and Dames of the Savoy Orders in Switzerland. The American delegation of Savoy Orders is administered by a delegate who is appointed by the Grand Master, His Royal Highness Prince Victor Emmanuel of Savoy.
The Italian constitution required all male members of the House of Savoy to leave Italy and barred them from ever returning to Italian soil again. So these criminals cross the border and they settle on the lake. Ah, Switzerland. It's quite fitting that Vittorio would end up in Switzerland, considering it was his ancestors who founded the beautiful country.
Whose ancestral rule began in the area where today France, Italy, and Switzerland come together in the vicinity of Lake Geneva, and then gradually expanded over the Savoy dynasty's 1,000-year history into the modern Italian state. Today, the Knights and Dames of the Savoy Orders are represented by over 40 national and regional delegations throughout the world. Worldwide administration of the orders is directed by the Prince as Grand Master and by the Grand Chancellor from their headquarters offices at the Chancellery in Geneva, Switzerland.
Although the exact history of Switzerland is a bit shady, and there is some speculation that the Knights Templar settled here. However, Swiss nobility and the House of Savoy were certainly an influence in the founding of this country. Now this is when a light bulb went off. What do all of these corporations and organizations have in common? They are all located in Switzerland. A neutral, peacekeeping country known for its banking secrecy, full of exiled monarchs and notorious criminals. This 2006 article explains how Geneva is the capital of globalization. According to the government department responsible for promoting Switzerland's image abroad, Geneva is a vital element in the country's international marketing strategy. We want to develop an image of a modern, forward-looking country rather than relying on stereotypes such as mountains and chocolates. Geneva is a perfect example for us. And to convince people, you only need to remind them that the World Wide Web was first developed at the nuclear research facility CERN in Geneva in the 90s. Geneva started to take on a new role as a testing ground for globalization issues. Every year, the World Economic Forum organizes a meeting of global leaders, business figures, politicians, and intellectuals in Switzerland. Switzerland is also the seat of the Guardian of the Free Market, the World Trade Organization, and its social counterpart, the International Labor Organization, as well as the World Intellectual Property Organization, which deals with trademarks for companies worldwide.
There is a single cohesive global public-private partnership that oversees the entire systems, and that's taken the form of global governance.
This is a laboratory for world governance. It is here that a new partnership is being forged between states, the private sector, and civil society.
The idea of compartmentalized hierarchical authority as a structure.
Geneva has become an international focal point for health issues. Switzerland needs to encourage these new collaborations between the private sector, NGOs, universities, and the state.
This can also be done politically. There is a political organisation, a policy organisation, I would say, called the Global Public-Private Partnership.
It should create a suitable working environment for the new bodies that emerge from these partnerships. And that's exactly what happened. Global governance.
A way of managing the whole of the world through a process called global governance.
Switzerland is also home to the Club of Rome. According to the Club of Rome website, Andre Hoffman is also on the board of trustees at the World Economic Forum and the Center for the Fourth Industrial Revolution.
The Fourth Industrial Revolution, which is bringing together digital, physical, and biological systems.
They've got a new idea, a new system, people have called that the New World Order or whatever, a new system that they want to sell to us. So how are they going to get us to believe in it?
One of the features of this fourth industrial revolution is that it doesn't change what we are doing, but it changes us.
The technological aspect of that is easy. You know, there are already AI algorithms on the earth that can manage just infinitely complex systems right down to the individual level.
Our bodies will be so high-tech we won't be able to really distinguish between what's natural and what's artificial.
So it's not a problem to manage it, technologically speaking. Their problem is getting us to go along with it.
The technology exists, but how do we get it and implement it?
So here we have the shareholder of the COVID test gathering ideas from the Club of Rome, the Royal Institute of International Affairs, Chatham House think tank, and many other shady organizations, and meeting with other heads of his family-owned company to then share these ideas as agenda contributors to the World Economic Forum in Davos. All the while, our FDA commissioner, Scott Gottlieb, was getting paid by these same guys, and even being advised by the head of regulatory policy at Roche in Washington, D.C. Now, the ideas gathered at the club and shared at the forum eventually become law. They eventually become public policy.
It's now time to turn this agreement into policies and action, into laws and budget lines.
The Club of Rome wrote an open letter to global leaders, urging them to implement the Planetary Emergency Declaration and Plan, which supports lockdowns and other measures to combat global warming and climate change. A, quote, green reboot after the pandemic.
All 193 UN member states adopted the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development.
But that's part of Agenda 21, which is a plan for the entire century. Sustainable Development Goals. When we realise what sustainable development is really about, we are going to go absolutely mental. There will be a push for a global revolution. Because people will realise, hang on, they're taking everything.
Presidents, prime ministers, and other high-level representatives from around the world gathered at the UN headquarters in New York for a high-level debate on achieving the SDGs.
This is a business model on a global scale.
As previously mentioned, even back in 2006, Switzerland was leading the way in creating the global public-private partnerships of today.
Global public-private partnership, which is a global, for want of an expression, new world order.
Like there has been a lot of kind of almost global level power centralized in Switzerland for hundreds of years.
Switzerland.
Something kind of clicked with me is with Switzerland and being a neutral state and all these international, I was like, whoa.
And no one talks about it ever. No one talks about Switzerland ever.
International banking and high finance.
My name is André Kudelski. I'm chairman and CEO of the Kudelski Group.
Mr. Kudelski is also on the steering committee for the Bilderberg Group.
I cannot comment on Bilderberg conference.
The secrecy surrounding the Bilderberg Group gives rise to conspiracy theories. Are you plotting a new world order?
Certainly not.
No? One world government?
What an idea.
They're also famously neutral.
Which dictates that the country is not to be involved in armed conflicts between other states. However, they are armed in order to ensure internal security and promote peace.
First we're going to come destroy everything, but now, hey, come on, let's keep peace, huh? Let's keep it peaceful, guys.
Please welcome newly appointed United Nations Messenger of Peace, Mr. Leonardo DiCaprio.
It's easy to sit on your high horse and to be all about peace and prosperity and common sense for the greater good when you have already taken what you need, you know? Canaan took that shit, then they were like, all right, now we gotta stop making our hands dirty, we're no longer gonna use a gun, we're gonna start using fucking loans and investments and you know, banks.